What's up, everybody? This is Andrew Erickson here from the Full Press Coverage Fantasy Football Podcast. I am coming at you live here from Ford Field Locker Room, covering the Detroit Lions. And, as we continue our 32 teams in 32 days, this is my next stop. So we're going to be talking some Lions football and talking about the fantasy football aspects of this team here. So we'll get started, dive right in. Starting at the quarterback position, Matthew Stafford. Matthew Stafford, has been one of the more consistent quarterbacks in fantasy football over the last few years. Consistently finishing in the top 10 year after year, but he's not really that sexy pick. His ADP has him not really anywhere near the top 5, more around that 10 range. So what you can expect from Matthew Stafford is I'm actually really hyped up for Matthew Stafford this season. He's got a full weapon of arsenals coming back. Marvin Jones, Golden Tate, Kenny Golladay, the young receiver, so his second season, and additions at the running back position as well. So Kerryon Johnson, bringing in LeGarrette Blount. They drafted Frank Ragnow, the center, and we've seen a lot of difference. With a center in particular, it's made a lot of significant impact in terms of offensive production. We saw it with the Falcons when they signed Alex Mack. So a good center can really go a long way, especially with the Lions team, that their offensive line has definitely struggled, especially in generating any type of running game. We've seen a lot of running backs go through the Lions. Yavid Best, Mikel LaShore, Joique Bell. So a lot of running backs, and none of them have really ever panned out. And then the latest, Amir Abdullah, who is a guy who I actually think that the Lions are probably going to end up trading at some point, unless they make him a full-time special teams player in terms of returning kicks, returning punts. But that's something I picked up, while watching the preseason game, which I can also get into here as well. But first, like what I noticed in the preseason game was Amir Abdullah was catching a lot of passes. They weren't really using him in the running game, so it seemed more like they were actually kind of forcing him the ball, trying to get him some more action so that they could kind of showcase his skills, his run after the catch ability, because that's what he may more likely be in the NFL. Is just more of a pass catching back. And the Lions already have that in Theo Riddick, so it doesn't really make sense for them to necessarily have two of this position that's very similar. So trying to get some capital back for Amir Abdullah. But back to Stafford. So actually one of my bold predictions for the 2018 NFL season is that Stafford will throw for 5,000 yards. My reason being is Stafford has already accomplished this feat one time before. He is one of the few quarterbacks not outside of Drew Brees that has accomplished that feat of that 5,000 yards passing. Tom Brady, Drew Brees, and then Dan Marino, I think. I think those are the only couple. I don't know if Peyton Manning's ever done it. Someone's going to have to fact check me on that. But the reason I say that is because he is, continuing his relationship with Bob Cooter, they have had a really successful relationship before. So I do expect the offensive production to at least be, just as good as it was last year. And the other thing is, so they're bringing Matt Patricia. I'm a Patriots fan. I'm not going to lie about it. So I know a lot about the Patriots defense. I know a lot of the Patricia schemes. And the Patriots defense has always been bend but don't break. Don't give up a lot of points. Give up a lot of yards. They give up a lot of yards in New England. And even though, obviously personnel is a little bit different in Detroit, I do expect them to kind of follow a similar scheme where they do give up, a lot of yards. They do give up a lot of receptions. And what this causes is eventually, if the other team's moving up and down the field, that means the offense is going to have to do the same thing. So I'm not saying that their defense is going to be, totally regress, but in terms of, yardage they're giving up, they could be loose. And I don't think they're going to necessarily be a shutdown defense, especially with the offenses they play, especially in their division. You have the Bears upcoming, an upcoming team. You have Green Bay with the Packers, and then you have Kirk Cousins and the Vikings. So a lot of games that are going to be high scoring. They play in the NFC, a very highly competitive conference. And their division specifically is also super competitive. So I do expect Stafford to throw the ball around the yard, especially with, obviously they did bring Kerryon Johnson as a guy that hopefully can establish himself as a runner, but he has also established himself as a pass-catching back. He does have those abilities on film to succeed in the passing game, so that's another aspect that could really help Matthew Stafford jump up, and especially his passing yardage. But overall, I think Matthew Stafford is a great pick in any fantasy draft. You're waiting on a quarterback. I think he's solid. I don't think that, I think he has some top 5 upside. and you're definitely going to not have to pay a top 5 price for him. So I really like Stafford at the quarterback position. Running backs, so I alluded to it already, Kerryon Johnson. He looked really good in the first preseason game, had some nice runs, and I think one of them was actually called back because of a penalty, but he did look pretty good, and based on the rookie running backs that we're seeing, and basically they're all basically getting hurt, Kerryon Johnson is kind of going right up my boards there. So I like Kerryon. I think that he definitely has the tools to be a 3-down back. My only concern is that he may end up being that in between the 20s running back, because they have LeGarrette Blount, they have they have Theo Riddick. Theo Riddick is the pass catching downs back. That's his specialty. And LeGarrette Blount is a short goal line back, which is something the Lions have sucked at. They were the worst at converting 3rd and 1 and the worst at converting 4th and 1 a year ago. So that's why I brought in LeGarrette Blount, to assume that kind of role, to make sure that he's able to help them convert on those short down passings. Same with them, drafting a center with their first-round pick, Frank Ragnow from Arkansas. The same mindset. They also drafted a fullback in the 7th round, so you're really establishing that ground and pound. He's unfortunately tore his ACL, so he won't actually, necessarily be blocking for anybody this season, but still the idea behind their draft, what they did in the offseason, getting rid of Eric Ebron, addition by subtraction in my opinion, and, bringing a guy like Luke Wilson, who for the most part I'm not super excited about. I think, we've never really seen Stafford succeed with the tight end, and Ebron has just kind of always been there, so it's just kind of by default he was able to generate targets. Interestingly enough, Ebron had 89 targets last season. Luke Wilson's had 86 targets in 5 years in Seattle. So before you hop on the Luke Wilson bandwagon, I would just, hesitate expectations a little bit. I mean, at this point, he's probably the 5th option. The Lions are going to see the most success when they're running out of, 3 wide receiver sets with Golden Tate in the slot, Kenny Golladay on the outside, along with Marvin Jones. I actually think that Kenny Golladay is a very interesting piece, and it's kind of why I'm fading off Marvin Jones a little bit. I think the way that you can kind of see it is Marvin Jones is the guy that I think is going to represent a little bit of regression. He had a lot of touchdowns last season, a lot of big plays, and he's very talented. He did have that one game where he just totally roasted. I remember every analyst was saying you can't start him against Xavier Rhodes. He's going to, get shut down, and he proved a lot of analysts wrong that week because he burnt Xavier Rhodes, and I believe that was the Thanksgiving game. So there were, he's definitely talented. He definitely has the talent to be a number 1 receiver, but I do think that Kenny Golladay will help generate some more targets. Marvin Jones' target shares went down when Kenny Golladay was healthy last season, so I do expect that to kind of, if Kenny Golladay does get more time on the field, which in 3 receiver sets that he should still be on the field. So I think Kenny Golladay is a good buy, especially, later in drafts. If one of these guys has sustained an injury, I think he's definitely going to even get a larger workload, but I think that he will see the field enough where he will have some relevancy in a high passing offense that is really, obviously focusing on passing the ball down the field, which Kenny Golladay has shown that he can definitely be a deep threat as well. Golden Tate is more of that kind of steady guy. He's more of a guy that you can get, has a higher floor, but not a lot of touchdown upside, so he's a guy that you want to complement with, more high riskier players. Golden Tate is more of, a guy that's really going to do more, catching passes, PPR guy. So I'm not super excited about Tate, but, he represents a solid play on a week-to-week basis for the most part. He has shown a couple inconsistencies, though, with his numbers themselves, so I wouldn't invest too high in Golden Tate, but I don't have any problem with you taking him, especially because he's going to man the slot and be that main wide receiver in the middle of the field for Matthew Stafford. That being said, Ebron, the departure of him, has actually left open a lot of red zone targets, which I believe may end up going to Kenny Golladay. Golden Tate has never really been a red zone guy. It could be Luke Wilson, but until I see it, I'm going to go with Kenny Golladay as being that red zone, the number 1 beneficiary of the red zone targets. Eric Ebron was 2nd in the team in red zone targets last season, so there is a gap there for an opportunity for another player to step up. So I do like Kenny Golladay in that essence. So that's exactly what I'm seeing from the Lions guys for this season. A couple other things as well. Golladay generated the 2nd highest passer rating with Stafford, 104, and 9.9 yards per target. so second most on the team. I did mention how they struggled at 4th and 1 and 3rd and 1. That's why they brought in LeGarrette Blount, who I do expect is probably going to vulture some touchdowns this season. So he's a running back who can get really, really late. And if you need to just throw somebody in there, just, hey, throw him out there. He's probably got like a 50-50 shot of him scoring a touchdown. So you got to like those types of odds, especially if you're, kind of backed up. You go 0 RB strategy. LeGarrette Blount can be a guy you target. And then lastly, just this offense as a whole in the beginning of drafts. Stafford is a great player to draft, especially because of his schedule in the first season. So here's his first 6 games. Jets, 49ers, Patriots, Cowboys, Packers, Dolphins. All favorable passing matchups. Some good run defenses in there, but that's what the Lions do. The Lions can pass the ball well. Where I do think the run game will increase from the additions that they've added at the running back position, along with the adding in Frank Ragnow at the center position. I do think that the offensive line will improve a little bit, but the main staple of his offense will still go through Matthew Stafford's arm, and that will ultimately kind of drive this team throughout the season and through your fantasy season. So buy these Lions players that I just talked about. Going to be doing another episode here as well within the coming days. A lot of big stuff coming the week. We got some more games on tomorrow night. I'm doing this on a Wednesday, so more games, and then hopefully we can prevent some more injuries from happening. We don't want more guys getting hurt. It's not good for dynasty players, but for not, we will touch base again. I will have some more teams. Probably not going to record tomorrow. Going to be watching some of the games, but this weekend for Friday, I'll be having some more episodes out where we will review a couple more different teams here. But as always, you can follow me on Twitter at @AndrewErickson_ and find me at fullpresscoverage.com. Thanks, guys.